We are the most photographed generation over time, and yet we barely print our photos. I get it. It's so easy to store all of our photos onto our phone and to just post it all on social media. And within an instant, you can access all of your photos and scroll through thousands of them. But then it gets to a point where you start to ask yourself, like, what am I gonna do with all of these photos? One of my biggest fears is that if the internet were to shut down tomorrow and if all things digital failed, would my photos still be around? I think it is a very real fear because you know what? Phones die, hard drives crash, and social media platforms can just disappear. I mean, we've seen it happen with like Google+, MySpace, MSN, and like who's to say Instagram will be around in 20 years. And even if Instagram is around, your photos are still heavily compressed on there, and it's not the best way to archive your work. And this brings me to my next point on why it is a good idea to distribute your work on a variety of different ways. So I back up all of my photos on hard drives, and then I also upload them to the cloud. I print my photos, and recently I've actually been starting to upload all of my photos onto Flickr. And I know Flickr used to be really popular like years back, and like people don't love the paywall, but I decided the price would be worth it if I could just have another area where I could, you know, dump all of my photos in high resolution and just have everyone be able to access all of that. And my photos will be able to be accessed long after I'm here, which is kind of a dark thought, but comforting in a way to know that my art will survive long after I'm here. I think when it comes to archiving, print is the best method. It's a reason why a lot of people shoot with film, because you kind of have that archival proof and it's physical, and so you don't have to worry about losing that digital proof where for example, you have all of your digital raw images and you let it sit on a hard drive. All electronics eventually fail, and so there is that comfort in having your photos in a physical form because they can't just fail. They could get lost, they could get burnt, but the likelihood of that happening compared to, you know, a hard drive failure is less likely. I also want to talk a little bit about the process of printing because I think it's so valuable. And I'm not talking about the technical aspects of it because that is a whole other thing to dive into, and I think that is important. But I think what is more important is the process of being able to curate and carefully select your photos, and basically reflecting on your photos and asking yourself, why is this good to print? Do I actually like this photo? You can't print everything because, well, it's really expensive and that takes a lot of resources, and so it's a good practice to be able to like justify why you're printing that photo and to develop a better intuition when it comes to taking photos, because you're subconsciously going to think about what makes a good photo. I think it's really ironic when most photographers are talking about megapixels but they don't print. Most photographers out there become really obsessed with megapixels, and the reality is you don't need that many megapixels to print. And if you aren't printing, you really don't need to utilize all those extra megapixels unless you are heavily cropping. Here's a 4x6 print. To print something like this at 300 dpi, which is the optimal print quality you'd want, you really only need 2.2 megapixels. These days, the standard megapixels on cameras is 24, so you have plenty enough of megapixels if you aren't heavily cropping. So for a good 8x10 photo, you would only need 7.2 megapixels. So I hope that puts into perspective that you don't need the latest camera gear to start printing. Printing doesn't have to be expensive either. You can definitely get decent printers for under $100 or $200. Personally, I use this printer, which is like an EcoTank printer that I got for $400 like during the pandemic. So I've been using it for a while now, and it's not the top of the line printer, but it definitely gets the job done, and I think it has like honestly pretty good image quality. And for archival reasons, it's more than good enough. I chose this EcoTank printer specifically because it uses liquid inks, and so that's like way more cost effective than using an ink cartridge, which doesn't last as long and can dry up pretty fast. So I just got back after spending a couple of months in Texas with my partner, and what I like to do after every big trip is to print some of my favorite photos and some of my best photos there. So that's what I'm gonna start doing, and I can take you guys through a little bit of my process. and we'll just have fun printing. So first off, I start by processing all of my images, and a lot of people ask me what recipe I'm using or what film simulation I'm using, but the truth is I always shoot in RAW and I edit them in Lightroom. So after I'm done editing everything, what I'll do is I'll do a rough pass on all of the photos and just, you know, I'll just choose the one that I like, and then afterwards I'll do a second pass, and then that's when I'll carefully select all the photos that is, you know, deserving to be print. And this process can take a while because I'm super indecisive and I like a lot of photos, but I can't print everything. So once I've got my selects, I'll usually send them off to the print section in Lightroom. I just like to do it within Lightroom, not because they have like some advanced features, but mainly because I just want to add borders to it, and Lightroom like lets me do that pretty easily. And so I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to change my page setup because this is not US letter. I'm going to change it to 4:6. Alright, press OK. And you can see some of the images being sized to fit, but I actually wanted to fill up the whole space a bit. I don't change a lot of settings within my computer. I just kind of let it do its thing, and for the most part it's pretty good. My printer tends to print a little bit cooler, so what I'll do is I'll kind of like offset it by like warming it up a bit. It's not a very scientific way of doing it, but it works. Okay, I'm gonna press print. So I'm just gonna print this one photo and then see how that goes. And then if it's good, I'll start printing the rest. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Look at that. Looks pretty crisp, it's warm. I think I'm gonna make the margin slightly bigger, but so far it looks really, really good. I'm gonna continue printing all of my photos though. This is my favorite part though, just like watching it come out of the printer and just seeing it come to life. Like, it's real. I freaking love this photo. This is when my partner and a good friend of mine went to like a park. We just wanted to like have a little picnic, try and read. And it was such a beautiful day out, and I'm really happy that I got to capture this because they were best friends. And yeah, I mean, this just looks like a core memory photo to me. Another reason why I love printing photos, because you can just like hold this with you forever. Hi, it's the next day, and I kind of overestimated how much one container would fit. It was so hard to choose what photos to print because this was an especially memorable trip, and with a lot of like big events too, like with my partner's graduation and like meeting some of her family, and you know, trips out with friends. And so I think there are like a lot more personal photos in here rather than like composed images, but they mean so much to me, and so I'd like to think that this is gonna be like an absolute treasure to look back on. So after I'm usually done printing, what I'll do is I'll write down the time and place on the back here, just so I can jog my memory when I look back on them. Now that I've printed all of my photos, what I usually do is I put them all into this container where I hold all of my photo albums. And it's pretty hefty. I really only started my archive since like 2018. And since then I've just been doing this, and it's nice to kind of look back at all of my years. At the end of the year, what I'll usually do is I sit down at my desk, I look back at all of my year of photos, and then I choose the best ones or my favorite ones, and then I just print them all out. And so that would be my year archive. And yeah, I think it's a fun little process to get into. I especially love looking at these printed photos because like when you can just sit with it and look through back on like all of your photos, I think nothing beats the feeling of just being able to hold a photograph in your hand and just sitting with it. I think that's something that's so undervalued in an age where everything's so instant and disposable. Photos are never disposable, and I mean, they're all memories and they deserve to have their full attention. And so I think that's why it's so important to print my photos. But yeah, I especially love all of these photos that I've taken on this trip because there are a lot of like big life events, a lot of mundane moments that are so special to me, and I just know that it's gonna be something that I'm gonna be looking back on a lot. And so it's important for me to preserve these photos. And you know, one day maybe my kids will look at it, or maybe my grandkids. And so if your photos only exist in the digital world, online or through social media, who knows what's gonna happen to those photos in like 30, 50 years, right? There it is. 2 months in Texas, 4 days in Colorado. Just put all of my photos in here. And then I'm gonna put this into my 2025 archive. And that wraps it up. I made this video because I just want to encourage people to print their photos. I think it's good for future you. I think it's good for archival reasons. So yeah, if you've been sitting on like a bunch of photos, maybe this is the time to print it and yeah, just have fun with it, and that's all that matters. Because if the internet died tomorrow, you'd still have these photos.